Me, Elias, early 30s, landed a solid IT gig, mortgage on my back, life checklist basically complete. Figured I'd cracked the code on adulthood. Been married to Miriam for roughly 5 years. Those first years? Actually amazing. Felt like we were a real duo. Joked about dumb things, planned our future, the usual happy couple routine. She was sharp, hilarious, driven. Couldn't help but feel proud standing next to her. Then, around year 3, the vibe started changing. Nothing obvious at first. She dove headfirst into online groups, blogs, and social media worlds. The language started changing. Suddenly, everything was about power dynamics, emotional labor, and the patriarchy. A normal conversation would turn into a lecture. If I said I was tired after a long week, it wasn't just me being tired. It was me failing to recognize the invisible workload she carried. If I suggested a movie for us to watch, I was exercising my male privilege by trying to control our shared leisure time. I tried to be understanding. I really did. I read some of the articles she sent me. I listened. I figured it was just a phase, something she was passionate about. But it wasn't a phase. It became her entire personality. Our home stopped feeling like a partnership and started feeling like a courtroom where I was always on trial for some crime I didn't know I'd committed. The warmth disappeared, replaced by this constant low-level resentment from her. The intimacy was the first major thing to go completely. It wasn't a slow fade. It was like a switch was flipped. Any attempt from me was met with a sigh and an eye roll. It was framed as me being needy, primitive, and demanding. She'd say things about how my desire was just a product of societal conditioning, a manifestation of toxic masculinity. It got to the point where I just stopped trying. The rejection was too much. It felt calculated to make me feel small. The house became quiet. We were roommates who shared a bank account, not a husband and wife. I was lonely, frustrated, and felt completely powerless. I was walking on eggshells 24/7. The breaking point came a few months back. I had a brutal week at work. A whole server migration went sideways, and I was pulling 12-hour days to fix it. Finally, Friday came. I got a decent bonus for sorting out the mess. On the way home, I felt a flicker of the old me. I thought, maybe I can fix this. Maybe I can break through. I stopped at this fancy bakery Miriam used to love and bought a couple of expensive pastries, her favorite kind. I walked in the door, feeling hopeful for the first time in months. She was on the couch, scrolling on her phone. I smiled, held up the box, and said I brought a surprise to celebrate the end of a long week. She didn't even look up at first, just made a non-committal sound. I put the box on the coffee table, sat down next to her, and put my arm around her shoulder. She flinched, literally recoiled like I was a stranger. She slid away from me on the couch. I asked her what was wrong. She finally put her phone down, looked at me with this tired, annoyed expression. She told me she was exhausted from performing femininity all day in a male-dominated world. She said she didn't have the energy to deal with my physical expectations. I told her they weren't expectations. I just wanted to be close to my wife. She let out this humorless little laugh. Right then, her phone buzzed. It was a video call from one of her friends, the one who was the most militant about all this stuff. Miriam answered it, putting it on speaker. She knew I was sitting right there. Her friend asked what was up, and Miriam, in this performative, long-suffering voice, started complaining. She described how she was trying to decompress, but her husband was demanding affection. How men just don't understand the concept of personal space or emotional consent. I could hear her friend on the other end making sympathetic noises, adding her own commentary about how all men are the same. They talked about me like I wasn't even in the room, like I was a piece of furniture, a problem to be managed. I heard her friend laugh and say, "You need to set your boundaries, girl. Don't let him colonize your space." Colonize my space. We were in a house I paid for, in a living room we picked out together. I just sat there, frozen. The humiliation was so intense it felt hot. It was a physical sensation. I wasn't just being rejected anymore. I was being mocked. My role as her husband, her partner, was being turned into a joke for her friends' entertainment. After she hung up, the silence was deafening. I didn't say a word. I just stood up, went into the guest room, and closed the door. I didn't sleep on the couch. I slept in a separate room. It felt more definitive. Something in me just snapped that night. It wasn't anger, not really. It was a strange kind of clarity. I realized that I had been trying to win a game that was rigged from the start. I was trying to get validation from someone who had decided I was the enemy. I was trying to get affection from someone who saw affection as a political transaction she was unwilling to make. I couldn't change her. I couldn't make her love the old me. The only thing I had any control over was myself. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I found an old pair of sneakers, some worn-out shorts, and a t-shirt. I looked up the nearest 24-hour gym. There was one about a 15-minute drive away. I left a note on the counter that just said, "Went out." I drove to the gym and signed up for a membership right there on the spot. I walked onto the gym floor, and it was like entering a foreign country. I had no idea what I was doing. I saw all these huge guys lifting insane amounts of weight, and women who looked like they could run a marathon without breaking a sweat. I felt small, soft, and completely out of place. I found a quiet corner with some light dumbbells and just started copying exercises I'd vaguely seen in movies. It was pathetic. My arms were shaking after a few reps. I was out of breath just walking between machines. But it felt good. The physical pain was a welcome distraction from the emotional pain. It was simple. It was honest. You lift the weight or you don't. No mind games, no subtext, no lectures. I went home, showered, and Miriam was just getting up. She asked where I was. I told her I went to the gym. She just raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh." The tone was dripping with condescension, like it was the most predictable, cliché thing a man could do. That "oh" was all the fuel I needed. This became my new routine. Alarm goes off at 5 a.m. No snooze. Get dressed in the dark, chug a glass of water, and get out of the house before she's even awake. The gym became my sanctuary. For that 1 hour every morning, I wasn't Miriam's disappointing husband. I was just a guy, trying to get a little stronger than he was yesterday. I started consuming information like a madman. I watched hours of videos on proper lifting form. I didn't want to be the idiot who snaps his back trying to ego lift. I learned the difference between a squat and a deadlift. I learned how to engage my lats, how to brace my core. I started a simple beginner's program, 3 days a week, full body workouts. The progress was painfully slow at first. I remember the first time I successfully bench pressed the 45-pound bar without any weights on it. It felt like a monumental achievement. I also overhauled my diet. I went through our kitchen and threw out all the junk. The chips, the cookies, the sugary cereals. Miriam was furious. She accused me of being controlling and fat-shaming her through my food choices. I told her she could buy whatever she wanted, but I was no longer going to eat that stuff. I started learning how to cook for myself: chicken breast, broccoli, rice, eggs, oatmeal. My diet became incredibly boring, but it was effective. I was tracking my calories and my protein intake on an app. It was a numbers game, and I could control the variables. After a month, I could see the first small changes. A little more definition in my shoulders. My face looked a bit less puffy. My shirts felt a tiny bit looser around the waist. Miriam didn't say anything, but I could tell she noticed. Her comments just got more passive-aggressive. If I was weighing my food, she'd sigh loudly and talk about how sad it was that men were so obsessed with their bodies. If I turned down a slice of cake at her parents' house, she'd tell everyone, "Elias is on a health kick," with a tone that implied I had joined a cult. I didn't care. Her words had lost their power over me. The silence at home was no longer awkward. It was peaceful. I'd come home from work, eat my meal prep dinner, and read a book, or watch a documentary on my laptop with headphones on. I was disengaging, building a wall. The gym was my world. The guys there were decent. Nobody really talks much, especially in the morning. It's an unspoken community. A nod of acknowledgement, a quick, "You done with this?" is the extent of most interactions. It was enough. It was a sense of belonging I didn't have at home. After about 3 or 4 months, the changes were undeniable. I'd lost a significant amount of weight, and it was being replaced by muscle. I had to buy new clothes. I went down a few waist sizes in pants. My old medium t-shirts were now snug around my chest and arms. I looked in the mirror one day and felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. My energy levels were through the roof. My mind felt clearer. The constant fog of depression and resentment was lifting. I was still in a bad marriage, but I wasn't a victim of it anymore. It was around this time that I first properly met Layla. I'd seen her around the gym before. She was one of the serious ones. Always there, focused, headphones in, working hard. She was strong. Like, really strong. She could squat more than I could. One morning, I was getting ready to do a heavy set of squats, the heaviest I'd ever attempted. I was nervous. I was in the power rack, getting myself psyched up. She finished her set on the machine next to me, took her headphones off, and walked over. She just said, "Hey, you want a spot? That looks heavy." I was a little taken aback, but said yes. I did the set. It was a grinder. The last rep was a struggle, but I got it up. She gave me a little encouragement, told me my form looked solid. That was it. But it meant the world to me. After that, we'd exchange a nod or a quick "good morning." A week or so later, she asked me a question about my routine. I asked her for a tip on shoulder exercises. It was easy. There was no agenda. We were just two people who shared a hobby. Our conversations were always about the gym, sets, reps, nutrition, injuries. She told me she was training for a powerlifting competition. I was impressed. It was just nice to have a normal, friendly conversation with a woman without any underlying tension or ideological warfare. It highlighted how twisted my home life had become. The first real sign of trouble with Miriam happened at a grocery store. We had to go together to pick up some stuff for a family dinner her parents were hosting. I was wearing a new shirt that fit me well. I wasn't trying to show off. It was just one of the few shirts I owned that wasn't baggy on me anymore. We get to the checkout line, and the cashier is this young, bubbly, college-aged girl. She's scanning our items, and she looks at me and smiles. She tells me she likes my shirt. Then she kind of pauses and says, "Wow, you must work out a lot." It was a little forward, but it was harmless. I was caught off guard, just mumbled a thanks, and tried not to turn red. I glanced over at Miriam. The look on her face was stone cold. It was a mask of pure fury. She didn't say a word. She paid for the groceries, snatched the receipt, and stormed out to the car. The car ride home was silent, but it was a heavy, aggressive silence. When we got home, she exploded, but not about the cashier. That would have been too honest. She started a huge argument about how I never help with the mental load of planning family events, how I just show up, expecting her to have done all the work. It was a complete smokescreen, a way to punish me for the attention I'd received. I didn't even argue back. I just stood there and let her yell. When she was done, I just said, "Okay," and walked away. That lack of reaction made her even angrier. She was losing her grip on me, and she knew it. My indifference was a weapon she didn't know how to fight. A few weeks later, my company had its annual summer picnic. It was a family event, so spouses were invited. Miriam reluctantly agreed to go. I hadn't seen a lot of my coworkers in person since the big project, and many of them hadn't seen me in months. The reactions were stark. People were coming up to me, telling me I looked great, asking what my secret was. Old friends I hadn't seen in a while were clapping me on the back. A couple of the women from the marketing department, who I'd never really spoken to, came over to chat and were being incredibly friendly. It was all very innocent, just people being nice. But I could feel Miriam's eyes on me the entire time. She was sitting at a picnic table with a sour expression, occasionally talking to another spouse, with this air of someone who was above it all. Every time someone gave me a compliment, I could see her jaw tighten. She was watching me being seen as a competent, attractive man by other people, and she couldn't stand it. For years, she had been the center of attention in our social circles. She was the smart, progressive one. I was just her quiet, unassuming husband. Now, the script was flipped. I was the one people were interested in talking to. This was a threat. Her entire worldview was based on a narrative where men like me were unremarkable, and she was the one with all the social value. My transformation wasn't just physical. It was an ideological betrayal in her eyes. She made us leave early, claimed she had a migraine. As soon as we were in the car, the interrogation started. She wanted to know who that woman from marketing was. Why was she laughing so much at what I said? She accused me of soaking up the male gaze from my female coworkers. I pointed out the irony of her using that term, but the sarcasm was lost on her. I told her they were just my colleagues being friendly. She said, "They're not being friendly. They're being predatory. That's what women are like when they see a man who takes care of himself. They're trying to poach what's mine." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. So when she ignored me and withheld all affection, it was feminism. It was her setting boundaries. But when another woman paid me a simple compliment, it was predatory poaching. The goalposts didn't just move. They were in a different sport altogether. Her argument was that my new body didn't belong to me. It belonged to our marriage, and by extension, to her. I was attracting unwanted attention, and it was my fault for making myself attractive. I was supposed to remain in the comfortable, non-threatening shape she was used to. My self-improvement was an act of rebellion. The fight lasted for days. It was the same circular arguments over and over. But this time, I wasn't just defending myself. I was pointing out her contradictions. I was calm. I used logic. I used her own buzzwords against her. I told her it was problematic that she was trying to police my body. I told her she was creating a toxic environment based on her own insecurities. She hated it. She would storm off because she couldn't win the argument. My confidence, which I'd forged in the gym, was now showing up in our conflicts. I wasn't the timid guy trying to placate her anymore. I was her equal, and she had no idea how to handle it. The gym was the only place that made sense. The dynamic with Layla slowly evolved. We became actual friends, gym friends. We'd sometimes time our workouts to be there at the same time. We'd push each other, challenge each other to hit new personal records. There was a real, genuine camaraderie. I never once spoke about Miriam. I never complained about my home life. The gym was my escape from that. But Layla was smart. She could probably tell something was off. One time I came in looking particularly drained after another pointless fight with Miriam, and she just looked at me and said, "You okay? You look like you've been through it." I just nodded and said, "Long night." She didn't press. She just said, "Well, let's channel it. Go for a PR on deadlifts." And I did. I pulled more weight than I ever had before. Miriam's negativity was literally making me stronger. The irony was not lost on me. She started escalating her tactics at home. She would try to start fights right before I was due to leave for the gym, trying to sabotage my schedule. She'd accidentally leave her wet towels on my gym clothes. She'd make plans for us on a Saturday morning, knowing full well that was my longest workout session of the week. It was all a desperate, transparent attempt to pull me back into her orbit, to disrupt the one thing that was mine. I just navigated around it. I'd get up even earlier. I'd do laundry before she was up. I'd tell her I couldn't make her Saturday brunch plans because I had a prior commitment. The commitment was to myself, and I wasn't breaking it for anyone. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place about a month before the big blow-up. Mariam had a get-together with her circle of friends at our house. I usually made myself scarce during these events, but I had to grab something from the kitchen. I walked in, and they all went quiet. As I was leaving, I heard Mariam's loud-mouthed friend, the same one from the phone call, say in a stage whisper, "Wow, Mariam, I see what you mean. He's changed." And I heard Mariam reply, her voice full of fake exasperation, "I know, right? It's like I'm living with a different person. All he cares about is the gym and his protein shakes. It's such a display of toxic masculinity." They all laughed. There it was again. The public mockery. The dismissal of all my hard work. It wasn't about health. It wasn't about discipline. It was just a convenient label she could slap on something she didn't understand and couldn't control. I stood outside the door for a second and just listened. It confirmed everything I already suspected. My self-improvement was a social inconvenience for her. It disrupted her narrative. The sad, compliant husband was a better character in the story she told her friends. The strong, confident husband who didn't need her validation. He was a villain. He was toxic. That was the moment I think I emotionally checked out of the marriage for good. I was still living there, still paying the bills, but in my head, I was already gone. I was just waiting for the right time to make it official. The gym was no longer just a hobby. It was my exit strategy. It was the place where I was rebuilding myself piece by piece into a man who could stand on his own. A man who wouldn't be defined by someone else's bitter, hypocritical ideology. A man who was about to find out just how fragile that ideology really was when faced with a little bit of primal human jealousy. The stage was set for a confrontation. I didn't know when or how it would happen, but I knew it was coming. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. The day it all came crashing down was a Saturday. It was maybe a month after I overheard her talking to her friends. Saturdays were my big day at the gym. I had more time, more energy. I'd do my heaviest lifts of the week. It was my church. I woke up at the usual time, went through my routine. Mariam was still asleep when I left. The house was quiet. I got to the gym, and it was buzzing. It's always packed on a weekend morning. The energy was good. I felt strong. I did my warm-ups, then moved over to the squat rack. Layla was there, working on her deadlifts nearby. We gave each other the usual nod. "PR day?" she mouthed at me. I grinned and nodded back. I was loading the bar, getting into the zone. Music blasting in my ears, the world fading away. It was just me, the iron, and the goal. I got through my first couple of warm-up sets. Everything was clicking. My form felt tight. Layla had finished her main lifts and was doing some accessory work. She came over between my sets, and we chatted for a minute. She was asking about my progress, telling me about a new lifting program she was trying. We were laughing about some gym fail video we'd both seen online. It was the most normal, innocent interaction you could imagine. Two friends talking about their shared interest. I was facing the mirror in the squat rack, and I saw her reflection over my shoulder. Mariam. She was just standing there near the entrance, about 20 feet away. She wasn't wearing gym clothes. She was in jeans and a jacket, holding her car keys in her hand like a weapon. She looked completely alien in that environment. Her face was pale, and her eyes were scanning the room until they locked onto me and Layla laughing together. Time seemed to slow down. I saw the flicker in her eyes, the narrative she was building in her head. Layla must have seen my expression change because she turned around. She saw Miriam staring daggers at us, and her smile just vanished. She immediately took a step back, looking uncomfortable. She said she had to go finish her workout and quickly walked away. I pulled my headphones out and turned to face Miriam as she started walking towards me. She moved like a shark through water, with a purpose. People instinctively moved out of her way. The whole gym didn't go quiet, but a little bubble of silence formed around us as she approached. She stopped right in front of me. She didn't even look at the weights. She didn't acknowledge where we were. Her voice wasn't a shout, not at first. It was a low, venomous hiss. She asked me if I was having a good time. I didn't answer. I just looked at her, waiting. She gestured vaguely in the direction Layla had gone. She wanted to know who that was, how long this had been going on. She accused me of using the gym as a cover story, of secretly meeting this woman, of having an affair behind her back. Her voice started to rise with each accusation. People were starting to stop what they were doing to look. The guy on the bench press next to me put his weights down and was now openly staring. This was what she wanted, an audience, a public shaming. I remained perfectly still. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even change my expression. I let her empty the clip. All the accusations, all the insults. She called me a liar, a cheater, a cliché. She ended her tirade with the big finale, her voice now loud enough for the whole area to hear. I can't believe you. I'm at home, trying to hold our marriage together, and you're here, flexing in the mirror for some brainless gym bunny. Brainless gym bunny. She was talking about a woman who was probably one of the most dedicated and disciplined people in that entire building. The air was thick with tension. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for my reaction, waiting for the fireworks. I took a slow breath, and then I spoke. My voice was quiet, almost conversational, but it cut through the noise. I looked her dead in the eye. I told her, "You are right about one thing. I am here with another woman." I saw a flash of triumph in her eyes. She thought she had me. I continued, "I'm here with Layla. She's my friend. She's also a competitive power lifter who could probably outlift you and me combined. We talk about lifting. That's it." Then I took a small step closer. "For the last year, Miriam, you have made it very clear that you find me, and my desires, to be toxic and repulsive. You have used my need for affection as a weapon against me. You have mocked me to your friends. You have treated me with nothing but contempt." I let that hang in the air for a second. I was miserable, so I found something for myself, something that made me feel strong and disciplined. I did this for me, not for you, and not for anyone else. I looked around at the silent audience, then back at her. And you didn't care. You mocked me for it. You called it pathetic. You ignored me, until the moment you realized that other people might not see it that way, until the moment another woman gave me a shred of the kindness and respect you refused to. This was the final blow. I delivered it calmly, precisely. So, let me ask you, does your ideology about the evils of male desire only apply when I'm overweight and miserable? Do your feminist principles only work when I'm a man that you believe no other woman would ever want? Because it seems like your progressive ideals just evaporated and were replaced by some very old-fashioned, very primal jealousy. Dead silence. You could have heard a pin drop on the rubber floor. Her face went through a whole series of emotions, shock, rage, and then for the first time I saw the truth. Utter panic. She had been so sure of her moral high ground, so wrapped up in her ideological bubble. I had just burst it in public, using her own logic. She had no response. There was no witty comeback. There was no academic term she could throw at me to win the argument. She just stood there, exposed. The hypocrisy was laid bare for everyone to see. A couple of the big guys who had been watching just shook their heads and went back to their workout, one of them giving me a subtle nod of respect. Miriam's face turned beet red. She had come here to humiliate me. Instead, she had completely humiliated herself. She looked around at the faces staring at her, judging her. She mumbled something under her breath, a pathetic attempt at a final insult that no one could hear. Then she turned and practically fled out of the gym. I watched her go. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel happy. I just felt empty. It was the end. I knew it. She knew it. I stood there for a moment, took another deep breath, and put my headphones back in. I turned back to the squat rack, re-racked the weights, and finished my workout. Every single rep. It was the most focused I had ever been. Leaving the gym that day felt different. The air outside seemed cleaner. I drove home, knowing exactly what I had to do. She was sitting on the couch in the living room when I got back, the same couch where it had all started. She had been crying. Her face was puffy. Her eyes were red. This was the next stage of the manipulation. The anger hadn't worked, so now it was time for the tears. The victim act. She started talking as soon as I walked in. Her voice was soft now, full of remorse. She was sorry. She didn't know what came over her. She was just so scared of losing me. She saw how I was changing, how women were looking at me, and it made her feel insecure. She admitted that she had pushed me away. She said her friends had been a bad influence, that she got too caught up in all the rhetoric and forgot about us. She promised she could change. We could go to therapy. We could be like we used to be. It was a great performance. I might have even believed it 6 months ago, but I wasn't that man anymore. I listened patiently until she was finished. Then I sat down in the chair opposite her. I didn't sit next to her. I maintained the distance. I told her I appreciated her apology, but it was too late. I told her that what she did at the gym wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of disrespect. I told her that she hadn't been scared of losing me. She had been scared of losing control over me. I explained that a marriage can't survive without respect, and she had shown me none. She tried to argue, but there was no fire left. I laid it all out, calmly and rationally, the constant criticism, the weaponized intimacy, the public mockery, the hypocrisy. I told her I didn't hate her. I didn't even resent her anymore. I just didn't want to be married to her. The tears started again, but this time I knew they were real. They weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of loss. She was realizing that the consequences were real. Her actions had a price, and the bill had finally come due. I told her I would be moving out the next day to stay with a friend for a while. I told her I would contact a lawyer on Monday to get the separation paperwork started. I said we could do this amicably, or we could make it ugly, but either way, it was happening. I was done. The next few months were a blur of logistics, finding a new apartment, splitting up our finances, the endless paperwork. Miriam tried everything. She tried begging. She tried getting our families involved, painting me as the villain who was abandoning her. She tried threatening to take me for everything I had in the divorce. None of it worked. The man she was trying to manipulate didn't exist anymore. I was firm, fair, and emotionally detached. I treated the divorce like a business negotiation. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town. The first night I spent there, sleeping on an air mattress on the floor, surrounded by boxes. I felt an incredible sense of peace. It was quiet. It was mine. I kept going to the gym. It was my anchor through all of it. Layla was amazing. She never pried. After the incident, she just came up to me a few days later and said, "That was intense. I hope you're doing okay." I just said, "I will be." And that was all we ever said about it. But our friendship deepened. We started grabbing coffee after our Saturday workouts. We talked about everything but my divorce. We talked about our goals, our families, movies, music. I learned that she was one of the kindest, most genuine people I had ever met. She was everything Miriam pretended to be. Strong, independent, but also supportive and empathetic. The divorce was finalized about 6 months after the gym incident. It was a clean break. We sold the house and split the proceeds. The day I signed the final papers, I felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was free. I spent the next few months just rediscovering myself. I focused on my career, reconnected with old friends, took up hiking on the weekends. I was building a life that I truly enjoyed, on my own terms. My friendship with Layla continued to grow. It was slow. It was natural. One day, after coffee, I just told her. I told her how much I valued her friendship and how much she had helped me get through the toughest time in my life, probably without even realizing it. And I told her I was ready to be more than friends, if that was something she was interested in. She just smiled this incredible smile and said, "I was wondering when you were going to ask." It's been about a year since then. My life is unrecognizable, in the best way possible. I'm in the best shape of my life, my career is taking off, and I'm with a woman who respects me, supports me, and challenges me to be a better man. A woman who thinks my discipline is attractive, not toxic. Sometimes I think about Mariam. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she's still single, still very active in her online circles, still complaining about the patriarchy. She got exactly what she seemed to want, a life without a man's toxic presence in it. I don't feel any anger towards her anymore. I almost feel a little sad for her. She was so caught up in an ideology of resentment that she destroyed the best thing she had. She tried to tear me down to fit her narrative, but instead, she just gave me the motivation I needed to rebuild myself into someone she could never control. In the end, she set me free. And for that, I guess I should be grateful.